We announced my pregnancy. Sister-in-law's secret plot to humiliate me exposed. Hello, read it? For 7 years, she had built a life of happiness and stability with Harry. Their marriage was a partnership of love and mutual respect, and she cherished the bond they had created. Yet, one element consistently threatened their harmony: Harry's sister, Kayla. Kayla's presence in their lives was a constant reminder of toxicity, manipulation, and unrelenting negativity. When she first met Kayla, her perception had been entirely different. Kayla seemed warm, vibrant, and confident, and her closeness with Harry gave the impression of a supportive sibling bond. At that time, she was eager to connect with Kayla, imagining a relationship that could complement her own growing connection with Harry. But as time passed, the cracks began to show. The qualities she once admired in Kayla turned into tools for dominance and control, and it became clear that Kayla's interest lay not in fostering harmony, but in maintaining her own influence over her brother's life. The seeds of this dynamic had been sown years before. Harry's early relationships had been heavily influenced by Kayla, who saw herself as a matchmaker or, perhaps more accurately, a gatekeeper. When Harry was 17, Kayla had pushed him into dating her best friend. The relationship was less about love and more about fulfilling Kayla's desire to have someone she approved of in Harry's life. It ended when Harry, feeling the weight of those expectations, chose to walk away. Years later, Kayla repeated the pattern, encouraging Harry to date another friend of hers. When he declined, her frustration boiled over. She even went to their parents, attempting to enlist their support in her plans, but they dismissed her interference, granting Harry the freedom to make his own choices. By the time she and Harry began their relationship, Kayla's attitude had hardened. The initial coldness was subtle, pointed remarks here and there, a lukewarm reception during family gatherings, but it quickly escalated. Kayla made it a habit to bring up Harry's exes in casual conversation, highlighting their successes and suggesting how well they had suited him. These comments were never neutral. They were thinly veiled attempts to create friction, to make her feel as though she was never good enough. Despite Harry's attempts to confront the issue, Kayla's behavior continued. When asked to stop, she turned the blame on them, accusing her of being jealous and hypersensitive. Kayla's interference became even more overt when she orchestrated encounters between Harry and his exes, inviting them to family dinners and claiming their presence was purely coincidental. Each incident chipped away at the peace they tried to cultivate. Her scrutiny extended beyond their immediate interactions. Kayla became a silent observer on social media, her constant monitoring of Instagram stories serving as a reminder of her ever-present judgment. Whenever a man left a comment on a photo, Kayla would immediately report it to Harry, painting a picture of impropriety. Her accusations were baseless, yet their frequency was draining. However, instead of allowing these attempts to drive them apart, she and Harry found solace in each other, often laughing at the absurdity of Kayla's claims. The tension reached new heights when Harry proposed. Their engagement, a moment meant to celebrate love and unity, became another battleground. Kayla's reaction was telling. She remained silent during the announcement, her demeanor icy. Then, in a dramatic display, she left the celebration abruptly, leaving everyone stunned. Later, she called Harry, expressing her anger at not being the first to know about the engagement. Her sense of entitlement to Harry's life was undeniable, and her actions only served to heighten the emotional toll. In the months leading up to the wedding, Kayla's involvement became a source of constant frustration. She inserted herself into every aspect of the planning process, offering unsolicited opinions and harsh criticisms. Her disapproval was vocal and relentless, targeting everything from the color scheme to the choice of venue. When discussions about centerpieces arose, Kayla seized the opportunity to ridicule her taste, openly mocking her ideas and implying that she lacked the sophistication to plan a wedding worthy of her brother. It was the breaking point. Overwhelmed by Kayla's incessant negativity, she made the decision to exclude her from the wedding. Harry stood firmly by her side, making it clear to Kayla that her behavior had consequences. Kayla's reaction was predictable. She feigned shock, painted herself as the victim, and even reached out to Harry, demanding that he control his fiancée's actions. But Harry refused to waver, affirming his support for her decision. Under pressure, Kayla eventually issued an apology, but the insincerity was evident. By then, the damage had been done. On the wedding day, Kayla arrived in a black floor-length gown with a veil, a deliberate statement that stood in stark contrast to the pastel tones of the celebration. Her attire was less about fashion and more about creating drama, and her presence cast a shadow over the festivities. Throughout the event, she mingled with guests, lamenting her supposed loss of her brother to another woman. Her theatrics escalated to the point where Harry's parents, finally fed up, asked her to leave. The incident was humiliating, a reminder of Kayla's ability to turn even the most joyous occasions into a spectacle. In the years that followed, she made a conscious decision to distance herself from Kayla. When their son, Nate, was born, she resolved to protect him from Kayla's influence. Harry supported her decision, as did his parents, who understood the necessity of maintaining boundaries. Kayla, of course, objected, but her objections fell on deaf ears. Though Kayla had faced her own struggles, including a devastating miscarriage that left her emotionally shattered, the priority remained clear: peace and stability for their family. Through it all, she remained resolute, drawing strength from her love for Harry and their shared commitment to building a life free from the shadows of negativity. The lessons learned from navigating Kayla's toxicity only deepened her appreciation for the harmony they had fought so hard to achieve. The months following Kayla's miscarriage marked a shift in their relationship. Harry and his wife, now parents to a young son named Nate, couldn't help but feel compassion for Kayla. Her loss was devastating, and given their happiness as new parents, they extended an olive branch. Kayla was allowed to spend more time with Nate, and despite her history of animosity, she seemed genuinely affectionate toward the child. At first, it appeared that the tragedy had softened her. Her interactions were surprisingly tender and kind, a stark contrast to her earlier behavior. But as time passed, the old patterns returned. Kayla's demeanor shifted back to one of self-pity and negativity. Conversations with her were dominated by complaints about her life, her difficult relationships, her failures at work, and the betrayals she claimed to have endured. She rarely took accountability for anything that went wrong, instead positioning herself as the perpetual victim. Her inability to see her own flaws became glaring, and she often sought to manipulate others into taking her side. Earlier that year, Kayla announced her engagement to Jamie, a man she had been seeing for some time. She planned an extravagant wedding, inviting nearly everyone except Harry and his wife. The exclusion came as a shock, especially since their relationship with Kayla had seemed to improve. Harry, puzzled by the omission, pressed Kayla for an explanation. Her reasoning was absurd. She claimed she feared that Harry's wife might create a disturbance at the wedding. She even referenced her own behavior at their wedding, where she had deliberately worn black, as a justification for her paranoia. When Harry shared this with his wife, she saw it as yet another instance of Kayla's manipulation. Outraged, Harry decided, with his parents' support, that they would neither attend Kayla's wedding nor contribute financially. This decision sent Kayla into a spiral of tears and accusations. She blamed Harry's wife for ruining her wedding and sobbed to Jamie about the unfairness of it all. But Jamie, to his credit, pointed out that she was responsible for her actions. Kayla, ever deflecting, dismissed her own role in the matter, insisting that everyone else should simply move on because their wedding had taken place long ago. Eventually, Kayla apologized, asking for forgiveness and promising to make amends. Despite her reservations, Harry's wife chose to forgive Kayla, hoping to move forward. The wedding proceeded as planned, and it was a grand, joyful event. Harry and his wife attended with Nate, and for a brief time, it seemed like they could finally put the past behind them. But the peace was short-lived. Less than 6 months later, Kayla appeared at their door, distraught and complaining about her marriage. Harry and his wife reluctantly allowed her to stay for a few days, during which she spent hours venting about Jamie. According to Kayla, their struggles to conceive were entirely his fault, and she refused to consider any other possibility. Her fixation on blaming him became tiresome, and she began redirecting her attention toward their lives, inventing problems that didn't exist. One morning, while observing her sister-in-law's routine, Kayla became unusually inquisitive about her visits to the gym. Often, when running late, she would grab a change of clothes to freshen up after her workout before heading to work. Kayla, however, interpreted this as suspicious behavior, peppering her with questions about why she needed to bathe or change so often. The answers, simple explanations about staying fit and maintaining professionalism, were met with knowing nods and unsettling smirks. Tensions came to a head during a family lunch. Kayla's mother-in-law casually mentioned a friend's divorce, noting how the woman had left her husband and taken half of his assets after discovering his infidelity. Without warning, Kayla interrupted, turning to Harry and asking if he and his wife had signed a prenuptial agreement before their marriage. The question hung in the air, silencing the table. Harry firmly stated that they hadn't, explaining that both he and his wife earned good incomes and saw no need for such an agreement. Kayla snorted, declaring that he was naive and could be blindsided at any moment because unfaithfulness was rampant. Her comments offended Harry's wife, who demanded an explanation. Kayla, unperturbed, began weaving a narrative in which she implied that her sister-in-law was unfaithful, citing her gym visits and changes of clothes as evidence. She claimed it was her duty, as Harry's sister, to warn him. The accusations were shocking, and before anyone could respond, Kayla went further, making a crude joke about whether Nate was truly Harry's son, as he didn't resemble him. The room froze. Harry's face reddened with fury, and in an uncharacteristic outburst, he lashed out at Kayla, accusing her of being unworthy of motherhood. He declared that her late child was better off in peace than being raised by someone like her. His words struck Kayla like a physical blow, leaving her stunned. Harry's parents, equally appalled, remained silent, watching as Harry unleashed years of pent-up frustration. He accused her of projecting her failures onto others, neglecting her marriage, and fabricating baseless accusations out of jealousy and spite. Reduced to tears, Kayla attempted to garner sympathy from Jamie, who sat beside her. But he remained silent, his lack of support echoing louder than any words. Kayla eventually fled the table, retreating to the bathroom. Harry, still seething, apologized to his wife for the cruel remarks made about her and Nate. His parents, though visibly shaken, expressed quiet relief that Harry had finally stood up to his sister's behavior. That afternoon marked a turning point. The fragile relationship between Kayla and her brother was shattered, and Harry's wife felt a sense of vindication. For years, she had endured Kayla's toxicity in silence, but now, there was no mistaking where Harry's loyalties lay. As the family departed, the household returned to an uneasy silence, with Kayla's actions leaving a lingering tension that would not soon be forgotten. The strain that Kayla's behavior had placed on their family reached its breaking point after her last confrontation. Harry, typically calm and collected, had erupted in a rare display of anger, shocking everyone present. It was clear to everyone, including Harry's parents, that Kayla had crossed a line. Her accusations, meddling, and relentless toxicity were no longer tolerable. Following that incident, they made the firm decision to cut Kayla out of their lives. In the years since their last contact with her, life had been peaceful. Without Kayla's influence, the family dynamic stabilized, and Harry and his wife focused on building a positive environment for their son, Nate. 2 months ago, their lives were blessed with unexpected news. She discovered she was pregnant. Though they hadn't been actively trying for another child, the news brought immense joy to the couple. They decided to announce the pregnancy on Harry's birthday, choosing his parents' planned celebration as the perfect moment to share the exciting development. Harry's parents, ever supportive, had organized a grand outdoor party in their garden. Close friends and family gathered to honor Harry, and the atmosphere was lively and cheerful. Unbeknownst to Harry and his wife, Kayla had caught wind of the event through mutual acquaintances and decided to make an appearance. When they saw her, they were both taken aback, uncertain how to react. Kayla, looking composed and cheerful, greeted Harry with a warm hug, expressing how much she had missed him. Her tone was apologetic, and she quickly addressed the tension from their last encounter, claiming she was sorry for her behavior. Harry, ever protective of his wife, made it clear that any reconciliation would require an apology to her as well. Kayla turned to her sister-in-law, offering what appeared to be a heartfelt apology. She explained that she had been attending therapy for several months and had come to realize how poorly she had treated her. Though her words sounded sincere, there was an underlying sense of hesitation. Harry's wife nodded politely, choosing not to challenge Kayla's statements. The day was meant to celebrate Harry, and she was determined not to let past grievances disrupt the occasion. Harry's parents, noticing Kayla's unexpected arrival, discreetly approached to check on their comfort. They offered to ask Kayla to leave, but Harry decided against making a scene, opting instead to let the situation play out. Throughout the party, Kayla appeared uncharacteristically upbeat. She mingled with guests, laughed with family, and seemed genuinely engaged in the festivities. Her demeanor was so unusually optimistic that it caught everyone off guard. Harry's wife, though cautious, decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps therapy truly had brought about a change. When it was time for Harry to speak, he stood before their loved ones and shared a moving reflection on his life. He expressed his gratitude for another year spent with the people he loved most, especially his wife, whom he described as his greatest blessing. His words brought a flush of warmth to her cheeks, reminding her of the deep love they had shared since the beginning. As the guests applauded, she felt a renewed sense of connection to Harry, a bond that had only grown stronger over the years. Seizing the perfect moment, the couple shared their big news. With broad smiles, they announced that they were expecting their second child. The crowd's reaction was electric. Shouts of joy, hugs, and congratulations erupted all around them. Harry's mother burst into tears, rushing to embrace her daughter-in-law, while Harry's father clapped him on the back, visibly emotional. Everyone was thrilled, peppering them with questions about names and plans for the future. Everyone, that is except Kayla, standing apart from the group, her expression was unreadable. She seemed stunned, her mood shifting noticeably. She turned away, isolating herself from the joyous crowd. Harry's wife noticed her reaction, but chose not to dwell on it. She assumed Kayla might simply need time to process the news. As the party continued, Kayla approached her with a smile that seemed genuine. She offered to bring her a plate of food, explaining that she wanted to make amends for her past behavior. Grateful for the gesture, she nodded and thanked Kayla. When Kayla returned with the plate, she handed it over with a bright expression, mentioning how excited she was about the baby and how much she wanted to repair their relationship. As she prepared to eat, she noticed shrimp on the plate, a food she was severely allergic to. Disappointed, she set the dish aside, deciding to get her own food instead. Before she could, Jamie approached to congratulate her on the pregnancy. Noticing the untouched plate, he asked why she wasn't eating. She explained the shrimp allergy, and Jamie offered to take the plate, joking that he couldn't let good food go to waste. She nodded, grateful for his understanding, and went to fetch her own meal. Minutes later, chaos erupted. Jamie began coughing violently, clutching his throat as he staggered to his feet. The guests froze, watching in horror as his condition rapidly worsened. Kayla and Harry rushed to his side, but Jamie collapsed before he could explain what was happening. Kayla's eyes darted to the plate he had been eating from. When she inspected it, her expression turned to shock. She spun around, her gaze landing squarely on her sister-in-law. With a trembling voice, she demanded to know if the plate had been tampered with. The chaotic aftermath of Jamie's sudden collapse left everyone reeling. An ambulance was called, and amidst the confusion and fear, he was rushed to the hospital. Kayla, sobbing uncontrollably, alternated between grief and anger, her gaze frequently landing on her sister-in-law with an accusatory intensity. The shocking news came later. Jamie had been poisoned. Hearing this, she felt her knees weaken, nearly collapsing under the weight of what it meant. That plate of food had been meant for her. It was Kayla who had handed her the plate with apparent goodwill, and Jamie had only eaten from it by chance. The thought of what could have happened to her, and to the baby she carried, was overwhelming. At the time, none of the others knew about her pregnancy. She had intended to announce it with joy, but the celebration had turned into a nightmare. Now, her greatest fear was whether whatever had poisoned Jamie might have harmed her unborn child had she eaten the food. The uncertainty was unbearable, as no one yet knew what substance had caused Jamie's collapse. The police had been called to investigate, collecting evidence from the plate to determine what had happened. Jamie remained hospitalized in recovery, and Kayla stayed by his side overnight, leaving Harry and his wife to field calls from concerned relatives. Harry's parents, shaken and terrified by the incident, decided to stay at their house rather than return to their own home. They were all left with the same burning question: what had gone wrong, and who was responsible? Knowing she would need to tell the police the truth about the plate, and Kayla's involvement filled her with dread. The possibility that this might escalate into an investigation made her uneasy, but her fear of Kayla now outweighed everything else. The idea that Kayla might have knowingly placed her in harm's way was horrifying, and the implications for her safety, and that of her children, were chilling. The guilt was difficult to bear. She kept replaying the moment when Jamie took the plate from her, thinking she should have simply discarded it. But in the rush of the party, she hadn't given it much thought. Now, she couldn't stop crying over what had happened to her brother-in-law, imagining the long-term impact this might have on his life. Her husband, unaware of the full story, remained close, sensing her distress but misinterpreting it as worry over Jamie's health. She considered speaking with him and her in-laws about her suspicions, but the fear of not being believed held her back. That evening, she decided she couldn't remain silent. Gathering Harry and his parents, she sat them down to share the truth. Taking a deep breath, she recounted the events of the party: the plate Kayla had handed her, the shrimp that could have triggered her severe allergy, and Jamie's subsequent collapse. As she spoke, her mother-in-law and father-in-law exchanged worried glances, their expressions a mix of disbelief and concern. Harry's reaction was immediate and visceral. His face darkened with rage as he processed what his sister might have done. Meanwhile, his parents struggled to comprehend how Kayla could have gone to such lengths, her actions far surpassing their worst expectations. Her mother-in-law, ever pragmatic, suggested checking the security camera footage from the backyard. Their home was equipped with a surveillance system, and reviewing the footage could confirm what had happened. Everyone agreed, and Harry's father accessed the recordings on his phone. The truth was undeniable. The video showed Kayla presenting the plate of food to her sister-in-law with an almost cheerful demeanor. The footage then captured the exchange with Jamie and the moments leading to his collapse. Watching the events unfold in stark detail left no room for doubt. Kayla's actions had been deliberate, and the consequences had been catastrophic. The realization hit hard. Harry struggled to contain his fury, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. His parents were visibly horrified, their daughter's malice leaving them speechless. It was incomprehensible that she could harbor such ill will, especially toward her own family. As the weight of the discovery settled over them, emotions ran high. Harry's parents lamented their failure to see the full extent of Kayla's animosity sooner, while Harry grappled with feelings of betrayal and anger. His wife, though deeply shaken, felt a strange sense of validation. Her years of enduring Kayla's behavior had finally been exposed for what it truly was. Now faced with undeniable evidence, the family was left with difficult decisions about how to proceed. Harry's wife couldn't shake her fear of Kayla and what else she might be capable of. The safety of her children and her unborn baby became her top priority, and she resolved to ensure that Kayla would no longer have any place in their lives. The gravity of Kayla's actions left the family stunned and speechless. In the days following Jamie's poisoning, they tried to comprehend why she would act with such malice. The situation was undeniably serious, and Harry's parents decided to hand over the security footage to the police. The evidence was clear, and the implications were impossible to ignore. As Jamie recovered in the hospital, Harry and his father prepared to meet with him. Ultimately, it was Jamie's decision whether to press charges against Kayla. For Harry's wife, the guilt of having inadvertently given Jamie the poisoned plate was unbearable. She couldn't stop replaying the moment in her mind, wishing she had simply discarded the dish. Her anxiety over Jamie's reaction was consuming, making it difficult to eat or sleep as she awaited the outcome. Weeks later, a significant development occurred. Kayla was arrested. The security footage, combined with her admission, left no room for doubt. Surprisingly, Kayla confessed immediately, breaking down in tears as she admitted her actions. The revelation shook the entire family, especially Jamie, who had been unaware of the full extent of what had transpired. Harry approached Jamie with empathy, assuring him that he would always remain part of their family regardless of his decision. Harry encouraged him to press charges, emphasizing the seriousness of Kayla's actions and the need for accountability. After careful consideration, Jamie not only filed charges but also decided to pursue a divorce. Kayla's reaction was desperate. She begged her parents to intervene, using her pregnancy as leverage to sway their decision. She claimed that their support was necessary for the sake of her unborn child, a granddaughter she insisted they would want to protect. However, Harry's father firmly refused, telling her it was time she took responsibility for her actions. While her mother struggled with sadness over the situation, she too agreed that Kayla's behavior could not be excused. The investigation revealed further details that confirmed Kayla's intent. She had tampered with the plate meant for Harry's wife, using a small amount of rat poison in an attempt to harm her. Her plan had gone awry when Jamie unknowingly ate the food, but her recklessness had placed multiple lives in danger. The charges against her included food tampering, causing harm, and endangering lives. In the courtroom, Kayla made an emotional plea, claiming that she had acted out of jealousy and frustration. She admitted to harboring resentment toward her sister-in-law since the beginning, unable to accept an outsider marrying her brother. She revealed that she had been planning to announce her pregnancy at Harry's birthday party, but felt overshadowed by their announcement. Her envy, combined with pregnancy hormones and past bitterness, had driven her to an act of desperation. Kayla insisted she never intended to harm the baby or cause lasting damage, arguing that her punishment should be lenient. The judge, however, was unmoved. The severity of her actions demanded accountability, and Kayla was sentenced to prison. The family felt a mix of relief and sorrow as the chapter came to a close. Jamie, now free from the toxicity of his marriage, remained a part of the family. Harry and his wife welcomed him to their gatherings, determined to support him through the aftermath. During one heartfelt conversation, Jamie assured her that the poisoning was not her fault, easing some of the guilt that had weighed heavily on her. His forgiveness brought her to tears, and she resolved to move forward with gratitude for his understanding. Life began to take on a new rhythm as the family adjusted to their new reality. Months later, Harry and his wife welcomed a baby girl into their lives, a bright spot after the shadows of the past. Their son, Nate, took to his role as a big brother with enthusiasm, showering his little sister with affection. Watching their children bond brought immense joy, a reminder of the love and resilience that had carried them through their trials. Harry's parents, though still grappling with the pain of Kayla's actions, found solace in their growing family. They supported Harry and his wife as they navigated this new chapter, providing guidance and reassurance. Her own parents were equally protective, encouraging her to seek help to address the lingering fears caused by the poisoning. Though she still struggled with trust and avoided eating anything she hadn't prepared herself, her husband's unwavering support gave her strength. Together, they were determined to heal and build a future filled with love and safety for their children. The scars left by Kayla's betrayal would never fully fade, but the family had found a way to move forward. They embraced their new life, cherishing the connections that had endured and the lessons learned from the past.